Hi, this is Lucy, your clarity coach, and this is Tuesday Talks at 3. It is so lovely to be back from my wellness break. I'm feeling recharged. I'm feeling re-energized. I am feeling so refreshed and ready to take this on. And thank you so much for joining me. Lovely to see you there. Nancy, lovely to see you there. Roseanne and Will and John, thank you so much for always being there for me. I totally appreciate you. I'd like to welcome you to the Mindful Parenting series, a very controversial subject. And this is why I bring it, because at times we overthink things. At times we end up pushing things in a certain way that comes across as negative. And yet there is so much opportunity for growth and joy in mindful parenting for both the parent and the child, or the guardian and the ward, whoever you are out there, as long as you've got somebody younger that you are responsible for, that's the word I'm looking for, that you are responsible for, then Mindful Parenting series is for you. In this series, I shall strive, or I seek to help you reduce your stress levels, because it can be very stressful, help you to enhance connection with your child or with your ward or the person you're taking care of, and to attract more thoughtful responses to challenges as a parent or as a guardian. And there will be 3 episodes. The first one, we're going to be channeling the fact that awareness is a very important thing. So we're going to work with awareness, and that's what we're going to cover today. Our next episode is going to be on presence. What does that mean for you to be present? And hopefully the tips that we will be sharing and exploring at that time will help us to grow into that point of understanding that yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is not promised. You only have this moment, the present. So how do you show up as a parent, as somebody who has a responsibility for somebody who's younger than you? Maybe you're an older sibling, or maybe you are just somebody who is taking care of someone's child. Whatever it is, you are parenting. Then the last one is going to be on practices. So what kind of practices are these mindful parenting things? Is it a paradox, or is it something that is easily understood? And I can assure you, if we just take it from a simple approach, it'll be easier for us to understand. When we speak with children, and the choice of words that we use are age appropriate, it is because we are breaking down some complexities in life so that they can understand. So I'm hoping that today you will come from that place where we are breaking it down to something simple for you to plug and play. So we always ask a question. Today's question is, how can you introduce mindfulness to your children? I'd love to know your answers. How can you introduce mindfulness to your children is the question today. And now I'm going to seek to share with you 3 tips, 3 very simple tips where you can already start doing this. But as you do this, you're not only introducing mindfulness to your children or to your wards, you're also modeling the same behavior. So why don't we start off with number 1, which is the science behind mindfulness. I love to do research so that when we are coming to the table, we are understanding what we are dealing with. You see, the science that works behind mindfulness is the one where we have awareness. And today's episode is on awareness. An awareness of your emotions. That is the science behind mindfulness. It's the awareness behind your emotions. It's as if you've gone behind the scenes to understand what is it that goes on in you. Understanding what your reactions mean and why you are reacting in a certain way. This allows you to pause and to choose a calm and nurturing response rather than the loud reactions or a knee-jerk reaction whenever somebody younger than you, your child or your ward, does something untoward. And usually when this happens, we don't have a moment to think. But this is the difference between a response and a reaction. A reaction is something that is not thought of, it's automatic. It's just that if you've been to a doctor and they're checking your knees and they've got this little intricate hammer and the doctor hits your knee just shoots forward. And this is why it's called a knee-jerk reaction, because it's not something you thought about. It's something that just happens. It just happens. So we want to replace this into a response and tie it into the science of mindfulness. This then promotes some emotional regulation and reduces stress. And we all want stress to be reduced. Stress is a good thing, but at times, in so much of it at the same time, actually is not good for us. It can lead into anxiety and depression, and then we don't want to go down that road. So we want to manage the stress that we have. The first place to start is with you, your awareness. What makes you do what you do when you do it? What is it that makes you do that? And you can choose to blame everything around you, every external aspect around you. Today I'm encouraging you in awareness to look within. What kind of responses do you have? And if they're not responses, then let's start with the reactions. What kind of reactions do you have that you would like to pivot, reframe, so that they can be able to be responses? Remember, we are looking at mindful parenting for children, to be able to parent the children from you, the adult or the older person. It's so important for you to understand where you're coming from. So is it a knee-jerk reaction, or is it something that you've thought about? And I'll share with you a tip as we move on. So now that is the science, and the science has a name. It is called emotional intelligence. Because all this is about emotional regulation, you being aware of your emotional responses. So it has a term scientifically, it's called emotional intelligence. And I can help you with this because I am a certified emotional intelligence coach. There's a lot that goes into it, but it starts with you, awareness. Hence, our session today is on awareness. How aware are you of your responses? In this case, we're talking about parenting. You see, mindfulness strengthens areas of the brain associated with emotions. And that area of the brain that is associated with emotions, we all know is called the amygdala. Or something for you to even to remember easily is the lizard brain. So if you look it up and you see where the lizard brain is, that is where all your emotions happen, and your brain is able to translate what is happening to you, and you can work on that aspect of your brain to make sure it's a response and not a reaction. Because this is where your emotional regulation happens, the empathy, the stress management, the management of anxiety. And this way it makes it easier for parents to be in a calm and present emotion with their children. This enhances your awareness. So think about what are those things that trigger you. And therefore the answer would be, these are the ones that push me to do X, Y, Z. It's different for all of us. You may be asking me, are those the benefits, Lucy? Yes, in fact, they're neurological benefits. Because as it sits there on your amygdala, you have the control to move one emotion to another. Because in as much as we have emotions in there, they are split into the good and the bad emotions. So we want to be able to work with being able to shift that narrative, being able to come from a place of just reacting to responding, because we want to build on the connection that we have with our children. This is mindfulness. You being able to do that means you are being mindful of the other person who's receiving you. So why not have it as a response as opposed to a reaction? With the response, you are in control. You're the one who's chosen how you are going to be in this situation. But with a reaction, you cannot take it back. Once it is done, in fact, it becomes your second name. You're the parent who shouts. You're the parent who talks down to somebody. You're the parent who operates in an area of no empathy. You do not take time to understand where this child is coming from. So how does this mindful practice impact the overall well-being of parents? Well, like I said in the beginning, it helps to reduce feelings of stress, because now you're playing in a different field right now. You are understanding where this child is coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. But you're also, first and foremost, understanding why you are responding in this way or reacting in this way. And you've been wondering, why have I been getting this wrong all the time? Why am I not being able to communicate with my child? What is happening? Every time I want to speak to my child, I'm encouraging them to have a conversation with me. It just amounts to a lot of nothing. Well, this is why you're not getting it right. This is why you keep on feeling like you're a failure. Well, here are the tips that I'm promising to give you. Understanding where the awareness needs to start on matters mindfulness. It needs to start with you. So take a moment and pause and remember where you're coming from. Have you had a hard day at work? Have you met somebody on the street who said some unkind things to you? Are you feeling frustrated about something that you have been chasing, maybe a project, or you went to a negotiation table and it didn't go the way you hoped it would? So you're coming with all this that is on your mind as if you're carrying luggage. And then your child or your ward or the person who's younger than you says something or does something and they know better. And what happens? You react. You cannot take it back. So in the response and introducing mindfulness, it is in your actions, in the modeling of your behavior where you are able to reduce your anxiety. You know where you're coming from. You know this can go in very many different ways. See, if you don't manage that anxiety, like I said, it can lead you to depression. We don't want a depressed parent. If it doesn't lead you into depression, it will lead you to burnout. And then you really are no good to any child or any ward that you have under your care. Once you have burnout or depression, the cognitive understanding that you have or the cognitive responses that you have are limited. They are so limited. In fact, at this point, you cannot communicate. And we don't want that kind of a person. So we want to be able to promote relaxation. We want to be able to increase our ability to cope with stress. And this is what impact has on us, the kind of impact that mindfulness has. And this allows you to be more aware of your mental state. We are talking about our mental wellness here. Our mental wellness is key. And one way to actually advance your mental wellness, to be better, and to nurture it is to apply mindfulness. I want to thank you, Tashi, for joining us, Hazel for joining us, Diana for joining us. Diana, I see you have a request to join us. Is that intentional or is that by accident? Please just drop me a message here on the chat. And Alicia, it's good to see you here. Also, the question today is, how can you introduce mindfulness to your children? Take a moment and just think about it, because today I'm promising you 3 tips. So the first tip we've already covered, and that is emotional intelligence. This is the science behind mindfulness. This means you need to find or have an understanding of your emotional intelligence and therefore your emotional responses. Thank you so much, Diana, for responding. You are listening in. You are most welcome. We're moving on to now the second tip in understanding the benefits for parent-child relationships. And here there are 2 main ones. There's one where we are improving the communication between ourselves and our children, and the next one is we are strengthening that emotional bond. Because you may say, Well, the parent-child, there has to be a relationship. It's a very normal thing, Lucy. I say yes, it is. And since it does exist, how then can we improve the communication? And one big one for me, I don't know about you, but for me it is listening. And listening does it for me. Are you listening to respond, or are you listening to understand? There's a very big difference. I want to say it again. Are you listening to respond? Meaning that you cannot wait for somebody to finish asking the question or finish saying what they're saying so that you can tell them what is on your mind. That is listening to respond. So you're missing out the messages that this person is sending you, and they're so blatantly obvious, but because you are in that world of wanting to respond, you cannot wait. Think about it. When a child is talking to you and they're so excited, they are so excited, and you are there in the middle of it communicating something to them, and they're not listening to what you're communicating. How does that make you feel? Well, now let's turn that around. I beg your pardon. Turn it around. And the child is trying to communicate something to you, but you cannot wait for them to finish so that you can respond. That is one scenario. The other scenario is listening to understand. And this is what it looks like. This is active listening. You're nodding. You're maintaining eye contact. You may throw in a word or two, a murmur, like, Is that so? I understand. Maybe you will even ask a question in between to advance that conversation. You are listening to understand. You are listening to the verbal, what they're saying. You're listening to the tone, the way they're explaining it. You can tell from your child if things are different. You're also listening to the non-verbal cues. It is important for you to realize that there are things people do not say to you, but the body language speaks volumes. So when you listen to understand, you're able to pick this up. You don't necessarily have to respond at that point. You may just be there from a point of empathy, to hold their hand, to increase the fact that they know you're there, the presence that we are talking about. You see, this kind of mindfulness when it comes to improving the communication makes this child be seen and heard. They feel important. I remember growing up that my parents had this skill. I didn't know what it was. In fact, it used to annoy me so much. I now have an appreciation and understanding of it. My parents, specifically my father, sat with us and listened to us as we spoke, and he interacted with us. He was seeking to understand how our day was, how we understood something, what our thoughts were. And my friends, every time they visited, they were so enthralled by my father and my mother that they wanted to listen to them so much. And I couldn't understand it. I now know what it was. They felt heard. They felt seen. That perhaps in their own families, their parents were very busy and did not have this skill the way my parents had it. I appreciate it now, and may my parents' souls rest in perfect peace. I have carried on this light to help people be seen and heard. So what can you do to improve the communication between you and your child, between you as a guardian and your ward? How can you practice this listening? How can you model this behavior of listening? Because this then improves the overall quality of communication between you and your ward. This is so key. Nice to see you there, Natasha. It's been a minute. We are back with season 3 of Tuesday Talks at 3. And today we are talking about mindful parenting. And we are asking, how can you introduce mindfulness to our children? How can we do that? We've already covered one tip, which is emotional intelligence, being aware. Now we're looking at the benefits. And we've covered one benefit on improving the communication. So now, how do we strengthen the emotional bond that is there by nature between a parent and a child? between a guardian and a ward. It is about being present. Be present. And I'll give an example of something that used to happen to me as a young mother. And I didn't know what it was, but I did it without thinking. Now I know it means mindfulness and being present. So there was a time in my season where I was very busy. I was advancing in my positions. I was getting higher positions. The responsibilities were coming. And that meant the time that I had with my children was suffering. So how then was I present? I then chose to do my work as I was present with my children. It wasn't easy, but these are the things that I did. And I remember this particular example so clearly, and it was with my daughter. So my daughter would accompany me to work on a Saturday, and yes, even on a Sunday. And I had some work to do so that my next week would take off well, and I was present in the office. Remember, this was a new job. So I was trying to get to understand how it was working, to apply myself, and I was still in that space of probation. I needed to show up, but my family was waiting for me. They needed mom, and they did not understand this transition. I mean, mom's mom. And so with my daughter, I would bring her to work on that Saturday and on that Sunday. And what I would do is I'll explain to her, I have a report I need to do. It's going to take me an hour at most. And therefore, I would give her somebody and say, this person is going to be with you. Either they would be swimming, or they would be in the restaurant eating. I worked in the hotel industry. Or they would be somewhere being entertained by some activities. And I would say that when the clock hand reaches here and here, because she was quite young, come and get mommy. Ask the guardian to come and get me, because my hour would be up. What had I done? I had strengthened that bond with my daughter, where she felt seen, heard, where she felt important, and more importantly, where I addressed her needs, because she needed to be with mom, and so I had to be present. So my child's need was taken care of, and she would come to me and say, Mom, the hour is up. In case I hadn't finished my work, I would ask, may I just have another 15 minutes? And I promise you I will be done. So maybe she would sit there and quietly do something as I continued to do my work. But I was able to give her a timeline. I managed my emotions. Instead of snapping at her, we were able to manage the stress levels. And I was able to do something so I could be present. I mean, that is a tip that I'm sharing with you. True story that I did with my daughter. And this fostered a deeper connection with my daughter. And it built trust, whereby to this day she knows, and this is something that built over time, she knows that if mom says she will be this amount of time involved in something, chances are she will be. So trust is built in this relationship. So this is the second tip for you to be present. Communicate with your child so that you can strengthen this emotional bond. Let them know that they can trust you. Because once your child knows that they can trust you, now I was talking about how with my child and build up on trust. So 2 things that you need to do: listen and be present. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me, guys. I appreciate you all. Now, moving on to patience. Many parents have asked me about patience. How then does patience come into mindful parenting? There are 2 words that came to mind when I got this question. There's patience and there's tolerance. You see, patience is you accommodating some sort of behavior that is happening, some delay or some problem or trouble that is happening, without getting annoyed. That is patience. So you will watch parents observing their children, and perhaps to you that child is doing a very annoying thing. But the parent is very calm because they have chosen not to get annoyed. They have chosen to see the teachable moment or the learning opportunity in this experience. That is patience. So what then is tolerance? Tolerance, on the other side, I seem to be having a lot of problem with my internet is going till the end. Yes, so patience, describing what tolerance is. Tolerance is you accommodating a behavior or a thought pattern that is not aligned to yours. So you're accommodating it, you're allowing it to happen, perhaps because you just want to understand more. That is tolerating something. So you're listening to a very different opinion from yours, and you're taking learnings from it, as opposed to patience, where you can see it happening and you're choosing not to get annoyed. Here you're choosing to learn something out of it, but you don't necessarily agree with it. And these two differences, there's a very thin line when somebody asks me, what role does patience play in mindful parenting? Well, it is key. It is key, and so is tolerance to a further degree, as it helps parents to approach challenges and situations with a calmness and an understanding, rather than frustration. And you see, in both cases that I've given you, definitely it is devoid of frustration. Because once the frustration comes in, the understanding and the mindfulness exits the room. And remember what I said. You want this child, you want the experience to be that they have been seen and they have been heard. Whether they are doing something good or something bad. Your response, and not your reaction, your response goes a long way. So I will ask you once again, how can you introduce mindfulness to your child? I would say by starting small. And I would say by incorporating some things in your daily life. For instance, if you get caught in one of those situations where something is happening and patience and tolerance is required of you, take a moment and begin to breathe in and out. And you will listen to your heartbeat begin to go down and steady. That is a pause. And in that pause, you're able to respond. I know there's something called the look. Maybe your look will be different if you took a moment to just pause before you respond. The other one is to be able to take some time every day, moments with your children, so that they do know that this time that is spent with them is really magical, because they are loved. They feel loved. And like I said again, they feel seen and they feel heard. By you carving out time in your day and spending special moments with them is very key. You see, with parents, we can also create a mindful environment. How do we do that? We influence the environment within which our children can thrive. Instead of having a child in front of a television the entire day, or on their phone, or on their gadgets the entire day, how about introducing technology-free times? And that means you also have to subscribe to that. Get off your phone. Just get off your phone, or stop watching TV at a certain time. But you've got to replace it with something. What is this child going to be doing when you take away this habit from them? You're going to allow them to come up with some calming, reflective activities. I was looking at watching a reel the other day, and it really impacted me so much that I said I must put it in today's episode. Is a young girl telling her story. She could have been all of 8 or 9 years of age. And this young girl tells this story, that she was at home and her mom said no TV. It was school holidays. And after a while, she got really bored. She didn't know what to do with her time because she was used to being in school, and when not in school, at home, watching the television. So she was told no TV. So she kept on saying to Mom, I'm bored, I'm bored. Mom would give her some activities to go out, go play, go talk to somebody, go read a book. But after a while, this child was bored and came back and expressed this boredom. And the mother then said, sit there and just do nothing. And the girl was like, do nothing? Mom, how do I do nothing? Just sit there
and do nothing. And the child was unable to just reconcile this in her mind, but because mom had said, then she sat there and did nothing. Then she told her, Mom, I'm bored. Then the mother said, look up on the ceiling. Just look up at the ceiling, just stare at the ceiling. And this girl did that. Man, it was so boring. But guess what? After some time, she started to see things appearing on the ceiling in the mind of her eye. And in fact, she began to describe what she was seeing. Some colorful creation was happening on the ceiling. She was so moved that her mind took her to a canvas. She took a canvas and began to draw what she had seen on the ceiling. Remember, the ceiling was just white or whatever color it was. It doesn't say what color it was, but I want to believe it's just one plain color. It was an openness of emptiness. And now she transferred that to her canvas and she began to paint. This girl then says, it brought on reflection. It then brought on something from within her of creation that no external distraction would have been able to fill. So no TV, no telephone, no talking to somebody, no reading a book in her case has ever brought her to this point of creativity. And this girl then reports that to this day, she takes moments of reflection. Because that was a lesson well learned. So is this a nurturing environment that you can bring up for your child? I don't know about looking at the ceiling for you and what that means, but you can come up with something that is technology free, that allows these children to be calm and have reflective activities that will help them with a life skill. So modeling this behavior yourself is important because children watch and learn. Mom, what are you doing? I'm staring at the ceiling. Why are you staring at the ceiling? I'm being creative. You've got to do it also. You've got to take moments. Well, in conclusion, and today we've really stretched a little bit, but I'm back and I'm excited. I'm recharged and so happy to be back to Tuesday Talks at 3 and see you all here. I thank you so much for joining me today. I see that Sharon, you've joined us, and I see Yoga Kenya has also joined us. Well, in conclusion, by understanding yourself, and that is your self-awareness, by understanding the science of emotional intelligence, you then can be aware of who you are, where you're coming from, and have some mindful parenting for your child. And even as you do this and you have reflective questions and moments, your child copies and pastes. And this is a life skill. So now you understand why perhaps you've been getting it all wrong. Because you have been reacting as opposed to responding. You have been putting that child in front of technology as opposed to giving them some technology-free time to allow them to use what is within them to be creative. And once all these are happening, you are able to reduce your stress levels. Because we are walking away from depression. We are walking away from deep anxiety. We are walking away from burnout. And today, the statistics of suicide are so high. We are walking and rebuking suicide in our lives. We are improving communication and strengthening connection with our children. Nancy, I see there's a question. The children are asking to adopt you as their mother. Oh, thank you so much. I am already your mother. Remember we talked about guardians and wards? Remember, this is something that we can learn. And this is why we are having these sessions, mindful parenting. And today it was all about awareness. So the benefits of having this self-awareness and modeling mindfulness as a skill are key, and there are three of them. Managing your emotions, like I've already said, emotional intelligence. Fostering healthy communication, making sure that people are seen and heard. Even you want to be seen and heard. And then simple activities that can create a calm and nurturing environment for the entire family, where we could even all of us just be seated very quietly. Nobody is on the phone, but we are in creative mode. I know it sounds like it's hard to do, but when we try it, we can actually do it. I am yet to get it right When I have moments of my own, yes, I become creative, but I'm still in that struggle. It's a journey for me. Well, the recording of this episode will be available on our YouTube channel by this evening. That is LMC Consultancy. Hop on there, like, subscribe, share with people. We want these messages to get across to everybody. Episode 2 of this series will be covering how to stay present with your children despite a busy schedule. We are all busy. We all need to bring home the bacon. We all need to get things done. We all need to be adults. But then how can you stay present with your children despite a busy schedule? You want to be there for our next episode. In the meantime, our social media platforms will keep you inspired and educated. Please hop on there, talk to me. Let's get this conversation going. Let us help build each other. And Roseanne, let us say this together. Until then, be kind to yourself. Bye-bye now.